You're not depressed. Not exactly. You function. You show up. You do what needs to be done. But somewhere along the way, something went quiet inside. The feelings that used to be there, joy, anger, grief, excitement, they're still somewhere. You can sense them distantly, like sounds through a wall. But you can't quite reach them. And the strangest part? You don't know when it happened. There was no moment where you decided to stop feeling. It just became easier, safer, and eventually automatic. Gabor Maté has spent decades asking why. As a physician who worked with addiction, chronic illness, and trauma, he kept seeing the same pattern. People whose bodies were sick in ways that medicine couldn't fully explain. People who were exhausted, anxious, numb, and had been for so long they thought that was just who they were. It wasn't. And what he found changes
Number
everything.
one, you were praised for being easy, not loved for being you, praised for being easy. The child who didn't cry, who didn't ask for too much, who sensed when the adults around them were stressed and made themselves smaller so as not to add to it. That child learned something early, that their needs were a burden, that love came more easily when they were calm, compliant, undemanding. Mate calls this the first wound, not cruelty, not abuse, just a quiet, consistent message that who you are is less important than how you make others feel. And so the child adapts. They become attuned to everyone else's emotional state and disconnected from their own. They develop what Mate describes as a template for self suppression, a way of being in the world that prioritizes acceptance over authenticity. That template doesn't disappear when you grow up. It runs quietly in the background of every relationship, every decision, every moment you swallow something that needed to be said. Number two, your body learned to hold what your mind couldn't process. Here is what Mate discovered treating patients with autoimmune disease, cancer, chronic pain. The emotions didn't disappear, they relocated. When a feeling can't be expressed, when a child cries and is told to stop, when anger is met with punishment, when grief is met with discomfort, the nervous system doesn't delete the emotion, it stores it in muscle tension, in gut inflammation, in the immune system that slowly turns against itself. Mate's most important insight is this: the body and the mind are not separate systems. What the mind cannot hold, the body carries, and the body, unlike the mind, cannot lie. This is why so many people with chronic illness, unexplained pain, persistent fatigue have histories of emotional suppression, not as a coincidence, as a direct biological consequence. The wound doesn't just live in memory, it lives in tissue. Number three, you confuse your needs with selfishness. Ask yourself this honestly. When you need something, rest, comfort, help, space, what is the first feeling that follows? For many people, it's guilt or shame or the quiet conviction that needing things is somehow a character flaw. Mate traces this directly to childhood, when a child's needs are consistently met with sighs, with absence, with you're too much. They internalize a belief that runs deeper than thought, that their needs are an imposition, that wanting is dangerous. And so they stop wanting, or rather, they stop acknowledging that they want. The need doesn't disappear, it goes underground, and it resurfaces as anxiety, as people pleasing, as a relentless drive to earn love through usefulness rather than simply receive it through existence. You were not born believing your needs were selfish. You were taught it, and what was taught can be unlearned. Number four, you are more comfortable with other people's pain than your own. You are the person others call when they're struggling. You know exactly what to say. You sit with their grief without flinching. You hold space effortlessly for everyone around you. And when something happens to you, you don't know where to put it. Mate sees this constantly. People with enormous capacity for empathy toward others and almost none toward themselves, and he understands why. Empathy toward others is safe. It requires nothing vulnerable from you. You are the helper, the strong one, the steady presence. There is no risk of rejection, no exposure, no need to be seen. Empathy toward yourself requires all of those things. It requires admitting that you are also someone who hurts, someone who needs, someone who is not always okay. That admission, for someone raised to be easy, to be useful, to be strong, can feel like the most dangerous thing in the world. Number five, You live with a low hum of anxiety you can't explain. Not panic, not crisis, just a persistent background frequency of unease. A feeling that something is slightly wrong even when nothing is. A readiness. For what? You don't know. But your body is ready. This is a dysregulated nervous system, and Mate is precise about how it happens. When a child grows up in an environment of emotional unpredictability, not necessarily violence, sometimes just inconsistency, emotional unavailability, chronic stress in the household, their nervous system calibrates to that environment. It learns that the world is not fully safe, that relaxation is a risk, that vigilance is survival, and then that child becomes an adult. The environment changes, but the nervous system doesn't update automatically. It keeps running the old program, scanning, bracing, waiting. The anxiety you feel is not irrational. It was rational once. It kept you safe, but it doesn't know that the danger has passed because no one ever told it that it could stop. Number six, you have achieved things but still feel empty. The promotion, the relationship, the life that looks from the outside exactly like what you were supposed to want. And underneath it, nothing. Or not nothing. A flatness. A quiet question you try not to ask too directly. Is this it? Mate calls this the cost of living from the outside in, when we spend our lives performing for approval, achieving to be loved, succeeding to feel safe, becoming who others needed us to be. We lose contact with the interior life that makes achievement meaningful. You reach the destination, but the person who needed to arrive wasn't the one driving. This isn't ingratitude. It isn't depression, necessarily. It's the natural result of decades of disconnection from the self. You optimize for the wrong destination, not because you were foolish, but because you were never shown another way. Understanding is the only thing that creates genuine choice. As long as the pattern runs unconsciously, you are its passenger. The moment you see it clearly, something shifts. You become, for the first time, the one driving. If any of this felt true, not just interesting, but true, then you already know something important. The recognition itself is the beginning. Share this with someone who needs to hear it.